Please, save my mama." The boy's voice cracked through the howling wind. His small fist pounded against the cabin door knuckles already blue from the cold. Behind him, a woman lay crumpled in the snow, her arm still reaching toward her son. She had stopped moving. The door swung open. A man stood there, tall bearded eyes hollow from years of grief. He looked at the boy, then at the woman in the snow. Without a word, he stepped into the storm. Oh. If you want to see how this story ends, subscribe to our channel and follow Clara and Josiah's journey to the very last word. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. The cold had stopped hurting 3 miles back. Clara Whitmore knew what that meant. She had grown up in these mountains. When the pain fades, that's when death starts whispering. She gripped her son's hand tighter. "Mama, you're squeezing too hard." "Sorry, baby." She loosened her fingers but didn't let go. "Just a little further." Sam looked up at her. 6 years old, but his eyes carried decades. He had seen too much, understood too much. "You said that before," he whispered. Clara didn't answer. She couldn't. Her left leg had stopped obeying her 20 minutes ago. Each step was a negotiation between her body and her will. Her will was losing. The flour sack on her back felt like stones. 40 pounds of weight she couldn't afford to drop. That flour was 3 weeks of survival. 3 weeks of bread for Sam. 3 weeks she had already paid for with the last of her coins. She would carry it until her spine cracked. "Mama." "I'm fine, sweetheart." "You're limping worse." "Just tired." Sam fell silent. He knew when she was lying. He always knew. The snow came down harder now. Clara could barely see 10 feet ahead. The road, if it could still be called a road, had disappeared under white. She was navigating by memory and prayer. Somewhere ahead, there was supposed to be a cabin. Old Man Perkins had mentioned it once back when people in Silver Creek still talked to her. Before her husband died. Before Silas Brennan decided she belonged to him. Keep walking. Keep walking. Keep her knee buckled. She went down hard, catching herself on one hand. The flour sack slammed against her spine. Pain exploded up her leg so sharp she bit through her lip to keep from screaming. "Mama!" Sam grabbed her arm. "Mama, get up!" Clara tried. God, she tried. She pushed against the frozen ground, willing her leg to straighten. It refused. She collapsed again. "Mama, please. Give me a minute." Blood dripped from her lip onto the snow. Red on white. "Just need to catch my breath." Sam's eyes were wild. He looked around frantically, searching for something, anything. Then he saw it. Through the curtain of snow, a light. Faint, flickering, but real. "Mama, there's a cabin." Clara lifted her head. Her vision was blurring at the edges, but she could make out the shape. A small structure. Smoke from a chimney. Someone was home. "Go," she whispered. "Go get help. I'm not leaving you. Samuel." She grabbed his coat, pulled him close. "You listen to me. You run to that cabin and you knock on that door. You tell whoever's there that your mama needs help. Can you do that?" Tears froze on his cheeks. "What if they don't come?" Clara cupped his face with trembling hands. "Then you keep running. You find another cabin, another town. You don't stop until someone helps you. Mama, promise me." His voice broke. "I promise. Go. Now." Sam stood. He looked at her one more time, his mother crumpled in the snow like a broken bird. Then he turned and ran. Clara watched him disappear into the white. "Please," she prayed to a God she wasn't sure was listening. "Please let someone be there. Please let them be kind." She closed her eyes. The cold wrapped around her like a shroud. Sam ran faster than he'd ever run in his life. His lungs burned, his legs screamed, but he didn't stop. Couldn't stop. Every second he wasted was a second his mama spent dying in the snow. The cabin grew larger as he approached. It was small, just a single room, probably with a crooked chimney and a door that had seen better days. But light glowed through the window. Someone was inside. Sam reached the door and pounded with both fists. "Help! Please! Help!" Nothing. He pounded again. "Please! My mama's hurt. She can't walk." Still nothing. Panic clawed at his chest. He was about to pound again when the door swung open. A man filled the doorway. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark beard flecked with gray. His face was hard-weathered by wind and time, with lines carved deep around his eyes. He wore a faded shirt and suspenders, and in his right hand he held a knife still wet from cleaning. Sam stumbled backward. The man's eyes swept over him. Cold. Assessing. "What do you want, boy?" Sam's voice came out as a squeak. "My mama. She fell in the snow. She can't get up. Please, mister, you gotta help her." The man didn't move. "Where?" "Back there." Sam pointed toward the road. Maybe 200 yards. She was carrying flour, and her leg gave out, and now she won't move, and I don't know what to do." The words tumbled out in a rush, tripping over each other. Sam's whole body was shaking from cold, from fear, from the desperate hope that this stranger wouldn't just close the door. The man looked past him into the storm. His jaw tightened. Then he set down the knife. "Stay here." He grabbed a coat from a hook by the door and pushed past Sam into the snow. No questions, no hesitation, just movement, long strides that ate up the ground. Sam ran after him. "I said stay here, boy. She's my mama. I ain't leaving her." The man glanced back. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition maybe, or something older. He didn't argue. They found her exactly where Sam had left her. Clara lay on her side, curled around the flour sack like she was trying to protect it, even in unconsciousness. Snow had already started to gather on her coat. Her lips were blue. The man knelt beside her. His hand went to her neck, checking for a pulse. 2 heartbeats passed. "She's alive." Sam sobbed with relief. The man slid one arm under Clara's shoulders, the other under her knees. He lifted her like she weighed nothing, like she was made of paper and prayers. "The flour," Sam started. "Leave it." "But, boy." The man's voice cut through the wind. "I can carry your mama, or I can carry flour. Not both. Choose." Sam looked at the sack. 3 weeks of survival. Everything they had left. "Mama," he whispered. The man nodded once. "Smart choice." He turned and started walking. Sam followed his small legs, struggling to match the man's pace. The snow swirled around them, trying to erase their footprints as fast as they made them. Sam kept his eyes on his mother's face the whole way. Her head rested against the man's chest. Her breathing was shallow, barely visible. But she was breathing. That was enough. The cabin was warmer than anything Sam had felt in weeks. Heat from the fire hit him like a wall. He gasped, suddenly aware of how frozen he had been. His fingers tingled painfully as blood rushed back to them. The man carried Clara to a chair near the hearth and set her down gently. Her head lolled to the side. She didn't wake. "Get that door closed," the man said. Sam obeyed, shoving the door shut against the wind. The sudden silence was almost shocking. The man was already moving. He grabbed blankets from a trunk, draped one over Clara's shoulders, handed another to Sam. "Wrap up. You're half frozen." Sam took the blanket but didn't put it on. "Is she going to be okay?" The man knelt in front of Clara, examining her leg. His hands were rough, calloused, and scarred, but they moved with surprising gentleness. Her ankle swollen bad. Might be broken, might just be sprained. He looked up. She fall hard. Real hard. She was carrying a heavy sack and her knee just gave out. The man grunted. He pressed carefully along Clara's calf, watching her face for signs of pain. Even unconscious, she flinched. "Not broken," he said finally. "But she won't be walking for a while." Sam's chin trembled. "What do we do?" The man stood, walked to the stove and poured hot water from a kettle into a basin. He brought it back to Clara's feet and began unlacing her boot. "We warm her up. We wrap that ankle. We wait." "Wait for what?" "For her to wake up and tell me who's chasing you." Sam went still. "What?" The man didn't look up. "You heard me, boy. Woman carrying a child through a blizzard hauling flour she could barely lift wearing boots that ain't fit for summer, let alone winter. She ain't out for a stroll." He pulled off Clara's boot with careful precision. "Someone's after you. So who is it?" Sam's heart pounded. He thought about lying. His mama had taught him to lie when necessary to protect them to survive. But something about this man made lying feel impossible. "A man named Silas Brennan." The man's hands paused, just for a moment. Then he continued wrapping Clara's ankle with a strip of cloth. "The mine owner." "You know him?" "I know of him." The man's voice was flat. "Everyone in these mountains knows of Silas Brennan. He wants our land. He took it after my pa died, but my mama got the deed back. The real one that proves it's ours." Sam's voice cracked. "Now he's hunting us." The man finished wrapping the ankle and stood. He looked at Sam for a long moment, really looked like he was seeing past the child to something deeper. "What's your name, boy?" "Samuel Whitmore." "Sam." "Your mama?" "Clara. Clara Whitmore." The man nodded slowly. He walked to the fire and added another log, sending sparks spiraling up the chimney. "I'm Josiah," he said without turning around. "Josiah Cole." Sam waited for more. Nothing came. "Are you gonna help us, Mr. Cole?" Josiah poked at the fire. The flames reflected in his eyes, dancing like old memories. "We'll see." Clara woke to warmth and pain. The warmth was unexpected. She had been so cold for so long that she'd forgotten what heat felt like. It wrapped around her like a mother's arms, seeping into her bones, thawing the ice that had settled in her blood. The pain was familiar. Her ankle screamed with every heartbeat. Her back ached from the flour sack. Her lip throbbed where she'd bitten through it. She was alive. That was unexpected, too. Clara opened her eyes slowly. The ceiling above her was rough pine stained dark with years of smoke. A fire crackled somewhere to her left. The smell of wood smoke and something else coffee filled the air. She turned her head. Sam sat on a sheepskin rug near the hearth, wrapped in a blanket twice his size. He was eating something from a tin plate, shoveling food into his mouth like he hadn't eaten in days. He probably hadn't. Not properly. "Sam." His head snapped up. "Mama." He scrambled to his feet and threw himself at her, wrapping his arms around her neck. Clara winced as the movement jostled her ankle, but she pulled him close anyway. "You're okay," she breathed. "You're okay." "I found help, Mama, just like you said." Sam pulled back his face, streaked with dried tears. "Mr. Cole carried you all the way here. He fixed your leg and everything." Clara looked past her son. A man stood by the window watching them, tall, dark-haired, with a beard that needed trimming, and eyes that had seen too much. He held a cup of coffee in one hand and a rifle in the other. Their eyes met. Clara felt something shift in her chest. Not fear exactly, though there was plenty of that. Something else. Recognition, maybe, like looking into a mirror that showed not her face, but her soul. This man knew loss. She could see it in the set of his shoulders, the hollowness behind his gaze. He had carried grief until it became part of him, woven into his bones like marrow. She knew that look. She wore it herself. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving us." Josiah shrugged. "Wasn't gonna leave you to freeze." "Most would have." His jaw tightened. "I ain't most." Clara tried to sit up. Pain lanced through her ankle, and she gasped, falling back against the chair. Easy. Josiah set down his rifle and crossed the room. He moved with the careful grace of a man used to handling fragile things or dangerous ones. You ain't walking for a few days at least, maybe longer. I don't have a few days. You do now. She shook her head. You don't understand. There are men looking for us. If they find us here... Brennan's men? Clara froze. How do you know that name? Your boy told me. Josiah crouched beside her chair, his eyes level with hers. He told me about the land, the deed, all of it. Clara's gaze snapped to Sam. Samuel. He needed to know Mama. He's helping us. You don't know that. You don't know anything about him. I know he saved you. Clara looked back at Josiah. The man hadn't flinched, hadn't bristled at being discussed like he wasn't in the room. He just watched. Waited. Why? She asked finally. Why help us? You don't know us. You don't owe us anything. Josiah was quiet for a long moment. The fire crackled and popped, filling the silence. I had a boy once, he said softly. About his age. He nodded toward Sam. Lost him 3 winters back. Him and his mother both. Clara's heart clenched. I'm sorry. Don't be. You didn't do it. Josiah stood, walked back to the window. Point is, I know what it looks like when a child's about to lose everything. I saw it in your boy's eyes when he came pounding on my door. He turned to face her. Couldn't save my own son. But maybe I can help save yours. Clara didn't know what to say. The words sat between them like stones on a river, heavy, immovable, altering the current. Thank you, she managed again. It felt inadequate, but it was all she had. Josiah nodded once. You hungry? Starving. The ghost of a smile crossed his face. I'll heat up some stew. Jeb. They ate in near silence, the only sounds the scrape of spoons and the occasional pop from the fire. Sam finished first and curled up on the rug again, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Within minutes, he was asleep. Clara watched him, her heart aching with love and fear. He's a tough kid, Josiah said quietly. He's had to be. How long you been running? Clara set down her spoon. 6 weeks, maybe 7. I've lost track. And before that? She was quiet for a moment, weighing how much to reveal. This man had saved their lives. He deserved some truth. Before that, we had a home. A small cabin up near the ridge. Nothing fancy, but it was ours. My husband Thomas worked in Brennan's mine. Good money for hard work, he used to say. She smiled bitterly. Turns out the work was too hard. Cave-in killed him and 6 other men. Josiah's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. I remember that. 2 winters ago. Yes. Bad business. It was Brennan's fault. Everyone knew it. He'd cut corners on the shoring, saved money where he shouldn't have. But when the families tried to hold him accountable... Clara shook her head. The sheriff was in his pocket. The judge too. We got nothing. Not even an apology. And the land. Brennan came for it 2 months later. Said Thomas had debts, said the land was collateral. I showed him the deed, our deed properly filed, with both our names on it. He laughed. Her hands clenched in her lap. 3 days later, a new deed appeared in the county office. Forged. With his name on it, and mine nowhere to be found. Josiah let out a slow breath. Let me guess. The clerk was his man too. And the notary. And the lawyer who processed the transfer. Clara's voice hardened. Silas Brennan owns Silver Creek. Lock, stock, and barrel. If you're not useful to him, you're in his way. And if you're in his way, he removes you. Exactly. So how'd you get the deed back? Clara hesitated. This was the dangerous part. The part that could get them all killed if the wrong person learned. But Josiah had already thrown in his lot with them. He deserved to know what he'd signed up for. Brennan's clerk, a man named Wilkins. She lowered her voice, even though Sam was asleep. He came to me 3 weeks ago, said his conscience was eating at him, said he'd kept copies of the original deed, the real one, and the forged one too. He wanted to make things right. Where is he now? Dead. The word came out flat. They found him in the river 2 days after he talked to me. Accidental drowning, they called it. But I'd already hidden the documents. Brennan knows I have them. He just doesn't know where. Josiah absorbed this in silence. Clara watched his face, trying to read his reaction. She saw no judgment, no fear, just calculation. "Those papers," he said finally. "They prove Brennan forged the deed. They prove everything. The forgery, the bribery, the false filing. If I could get them to the territorial court in Denver, Brennan would lose his mine, his land, maybe even his freedom. That's a long way to travel." "I know. In winter." "I know. With a busted ankle and a 6-year-old. Clara met his eyes. "I know. But what choice do I have? If I stay here, Brennan's men will find me eventually. If I go back to Silver Creek, I'm dead. The only way out is through." Josiah was silent for a long time. The fire had burned low, casting long shadows across the room. Outside, the storm still raged, wind howling like hungry wolves. "There might be another way," he said quietly. Clara's heart quickened. "What do you mean?" "I know people. Not many, but a few. A lawyer in Red Hollow who owes me a favor. A marshal 2 towns over who ain't in anybody's pocket." Josiah leaned forward. "You get me those documents, I can get them where they need to go, without you having to walk 100 miles in the snow?" Clara stared at him. "Why would you do that? You'd be making an enemy of the most powerful man in the territory." Josiah's jaw tightened. "I've been making enemies my whole life. One more won't kill me." "It might? Then I'll die standing up instead of lying down." He held her gaze. "Some things are worth fighting for, Mrs. Whitmore, even if you lose." Clara felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back, refusing to cry in front of this stranger who was rapidly becoming something more. "It's Clara," she said softly. "Just Clara." Josiah nodded slowly. "All right. Clara." He stood, grabbed a blanket from the trunk, and draped it gently over her shoulders. "Get some sleep. We'll figure out the rest in the morning." He started to walk away. "Mr. Cole." He paused. "Why did you open that door?" Josiah was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough, like words dragged over gravel. "Because when your boy knocked, I was sitting here with a rifle in my lap, trying to decide if tonight was the night I stopped waiting to die." He didn't turn around. "I heard him screaming for help, and I thought, maybe that's my answer. Maybe the universe was telling me I still had something left to do." Clara's breath caught. "I'm glad you opened the door," she whispered. Josiah walked to his chair by the window and sat down, the rifle across his knees. "So am I," he said. "So am I." Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the cabin, something had shifted. 3 broken people thrown together by chance and desperation huddled against the cold. They were strangers, still bound only by circumstance. But somewhere in the night, as the fire burned low and the wind screamed its fury, the first fragile threads of trust began to form. Clara slept with her hand on Sam's shoulder. Sam slept with dreams of a father he could barely remember. And Josiah sat by the window watching the snow fall, thinking about the dead, and wondering if maybe, just maybe, he'd been given a reason to live. The storm would pass. What came after was the real test. Morning came slow and gray, the kind of light that seeped through cracks rather than streamed through windows. Clara woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Sam's laughter. She hadn't heard him laugh in weeks. Her eyes opened to find the chair by the window empty. Josiah's rifle was gone. For one terrible moment, panic seized her chest. Had he left? Had he decided they were too much trouble? Then she heard his voice, low and patient, coming from somewhere near the back of the cabin. "No, you gotta hold it steady. Like this." "But it keeps slipping." "That's 'cause you're gripping too tight. Ease up. Let the wood do the work." Clara pushed herself upright, wincing as her ankle protested. She twisted in the chair to see Josiah kneeling beside Sam near a small workbench. The man held a piece of wood in one hand and a carving knife in the other. Sam watched with rapt attention, his small fingers wrapped around a similar piece. "What are you making?" Clara asked. Both heads turned. Sam's face lit up. "Mama! Mr. Cole's teaching me to whittle. Look, I'm making a horse." He held up the wood. It looked nothing like a horse, more like a lumpy potato with legs, but his pride was unmistakable. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." Josiah stood brushing wood shavings from his knees. "Thought it'd keep him busy. Hope you don't mind." "I don't mind at all." Clara's voice softened. "Thank you." He nodded once, the way he seemed to do everything minimal efficient, as if words were currency he couldn't afford to spend. He crossed to the stove and poured coffee into a tin cup. "How's the ankle?" "Hurts." "Good." Clara blinked. "Good? Means it ain't dead." He brought her the coffee, steam curling from its surface. "Drink this. You need your strength." She took the cup, their fingers brushing briefly. His hands were warm despite the cold. "Storm's dying down," Josiah said, moving to the window. "Should clear by afternoon. And then—" He was quiet for a moment. "Then we figure out our next move." Sam had returned to his whittling tongue poking out in concentration. Clara watched him, her heart aching. "He's taken to you," she said quietly. Josiah didn't turn from the window. "He's a good kid, just needs someone to show him things." His father used to show him things, before. The words hung in the air like smoke. Josiah's shoulders tensed, almost imperceptibly. "What was he like, your husband?" Clara sipped her coffee, buying time. No one had asked her about Thomas in months. People in Silver Creek had stopped saying his name after Brennan made it clear that sympathy for the Whitmore widow was bad for business. "He was kind," she said finally. "Gentle. The kind of man who'd give his last dollar to a stranger and then work double shifts to make up for it." She smiled sadly. "He wasn't a fighter. That was always his problem. He believed people were basically good, that if you just worked hard and kept your head down, everything would work out." "And you believe that?" "I used to." Clara's grip tightened on the cup. "Now I believe you have to fight for what's yours or someone stronger will take it." Josiah turned to look at her. Something passed between them, an understanding that went deeper than words. "Your boy," he said slowly. "He's got more of you in him than his father, I reckon." "Is that a compliment?" "It's an observation." Josiah's gaze drifted to Sam. "Kid ran through a blizzard to save you. Didn't hesitate, didn't cry, just did what needed doing. That's not gentleness. That's steel." Clara felt tears threatening again. She blinked them back. "He's had to grow up fast." "Most of us do, one way or another." The morning stretched on quiet and strangely comfortable. Clara dozed in her chair while Sam continued his whittling lesson. She woke to find him sitting cross-legged on the floor beside her, the wooden horse, now slightly more horse-shaped, clutched in his hands. "Mama, can I ask you something?" "Of course, baby." Sam's voice dropped to a whisper. "Does Mr. Cole have a family?" Clara hesitated. She thought of what Josiah had told her the night before, the wife and son he'd lost, the grief that had driven him to solitude. "He used to," she said carefully. "But they're gone now." "Gone where?" "To heaven, sweetheart." Sam was quiet for a moment. His fingers traced the rough edges of his wooden horse. "Is that why he's so sad?" Clara's heart clenched. "You think he's sad?" "I can tell." He's like you, Mama. He smiles sometimes, but his eyes don't smile. Not really. Out of the mouths of babes, Clara thought. Her 6-year-old had seen in minutes what most adults would miss entirely. Yes, baby. I think he's very sad. Maybe we can help him be happy again. Clara pulled him close and kissed the top of his head. Maybe we can. Across the room, Josiah stood with his back to them, adding wood to the fire. If he'd heard their conversation, he gave no sign, but Clara noticed his hands had gone still on the logs, and his shoulders carried a tension that hadn't been there before. By midday, the storm had indeed begun to fade. The wind's howl softened to a whisper, and pale sunlight broke through the clouds in fragile shafts. Josiah stood at the window for a long time, watching the world outside. I need to check the property, he said finally. Make sure nothing's damaged. I can come with you, Sam offered eagerly. No! The word was sharp, too sharp. Sam's face fell. Josiah seemed to catch himself. His expression softened slightly. I mean, not this time, son. Snow's still deep, and I need to move fast. But when I get back, we'll work on that horse some more. Sound fair? Sam nodded, but his enthusiasm had dimmed. Josiah grabbed his coat and rifle, then paused at the door. He looked back at Clara. Lock this behind me. Don't open it for anyone. You expecting trouble? I'm always expecting trouble. That's how you stay alive. He slipped out into the cold, and Clara limped to the door to bolt it behind him. Through the window, she watched his tall figure disappear into the white. Sam came to stand beside her. Do you think he'll come back? Of course he will. Promise. Clara put her arm around him. I promise. But even as she said it, she wondered if it was a promise she could keep. Josiah moved through the snow with the practiced ease of a man who'd spent decades in these mountains. His eyes scanned the tree line, the trail, the horizon, looking for anything out of place. The storm had dumped at least 2 feet of fresh powder. Good for covering tracks. Bad for spotting intruders. He circled the cabin twice, checking for signs of approach. Nothing. The only tracks in the snow were deer and rabbit, maybe a fox. If Brennan's men were out there, they'd been smart enough to stay holed up during the blizzard. But they'd be coming. Josiah knew it in his bones. He paused at the edge of the clearing, looking back at the cabin. Smoke curled from the chimney, and he could see Clara's silhouette through the window, Sam's smaller form beside her. Something stirred in his chest. Something he'd thought long dead. He remembered another cabin, another window, another woman watching for him to come home. Mary had always stood at that window, their son Daniel in her arms, waving as Josiah rode up the path. It had been their ritual, their small piece of joy in a hard world. Then the fever came. Daniel went first. 3 days of burning, thrashing, crying for his papa to make it stop. Josiah had held him through it all, had promised him everything would be okay, had lied through his teeth until the boy's breath finally stopped. Mary lasted a week longer. Long enough to bury their son. Long enough to tell Josiah it wasn't his fault. Long enough to make him promise he wouldn't give up. He'd broken that promise 100 times in the years since. Every night he'd sat alone in that cabin, rifle in his lap, thinking about how easy it would be to end the pain. But he'd never done it. And now he knew why. The universe, it seemed, had other plans. Josiah shook off the memories and turned his attention back to the task at hand. He followed the trail down to where he'd found Clara the night before. The flour sack was still there, half buried in snow. He dug it out, surprised to find it mostly intact. Only a small tear at one seam, easily mended. He hoisted it onto his shoulder and started back toward the cabin. Halfway there, he stopped. Something was wrong. He couldn't say what exactly, a feeling, an instinct honed by years of living on the edge. The forest was too quiet. The birds had stopped singing. Josiah set down the flour sack and unslung his rifle. He moved to the cover of a large pine and waited, barely breathing. A minute passed. 2. Then he heard it, the faint crunch of snow under boots. Not an animal. Too heavy, too rhythmic. Human. Josiah's finger found the trigger. He watched the tree line patient as death. A figure emerged from the woods. Male, stocky, wearing a heavy coat and carrying a shotgun. Behind him came a second man, thinner, with a rifle slung across his back. They moved with purpose, heading straight for the cabin. Josiah didn't recognize their faces, but he knew their type. Hard men. Hired men. The kind who asked no questions and left no witnesses. Brennan's boys. He had maybe 30 seconds to decide. Confront them now in the open, or let them reach the cabin and try to deal with them there. Neither option was good. Josiah chose the one that gave Clara and Sam the best chance. He stepped out from behind the tree. "That's far enough." Both men froze. The stocky one's hand twitched toward his shotgun. "Don't!" Josiah warned. "My rifle's already aimed. You'll be dead before your finger finds the trigger." The thin man raised his hands slowly. "Easy, friend. We don't want trouble." "Then you shouldn't have come looking for it. What do you want?" The stocky one spoke, his voice rough. "We're looking for a woman. Widow by the name of Whitmore. Her and a boy. You seen them?" Josiah kept his expression blank. "No." "You sure about that?" "We tracked them to this area. Storm covered the trail, but we know they're close." "You tracked wrong. No woman here. Just me." The thin man exchanged a glance with his partner. Something passed between them, a silent communication. "Mind if we have a look around?" the thin man asked. "Just to be sure." "I mind plenty." "That's not very neighborly." Josiah's voice dropped to ice. "I ain't your neighbor, and if you take one more step toward that cabin, I'll put a hole in you big enough to see through." The stocky one's face twisted. "You know who we work for?" "I know." "Then you know what happens to folks who get in our way." Josiah smiled. It was not a kind smile. "I've been dying slow for 3 years. You think I'm scared of anything you can do to me?" The men hesitated. This wasn't going the way they'd expected. They'd come looking for a defenseless woman and her child. Instead, they'd found a man with dead eyes and a steady rifle hand. "Walk away," Josiah said quietly. "Tell Brennan you didn't find them. Tell him the storm must have taken them. I don't care what you tell him. But if I see you again, I won't waste words." A long moment stretched between them. Then, the thin man lowered his hands slowly. All right, we're leaving." He started to back away, pulling his partner with him. "But this ain't over, mister. Mr. Brennan ain't the forgiving type." "Neither am I." Josiah watched them retreat into the trees, his rifle never wavering. He waited until he could no longer hear their footsteps, then waited 5 minutes more. Only then did he lower his weapon. His hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something older, deeper. The familiar surge of violence, the animal instinct to protect. He'd felt it before in another life when he'd worn a badge and carried justice in his gun belt. He'd thought that part of him was gone. Apparently not. Josiah grabbed the flour sack and hurried back to the cabin. He knocked in a specific pattern, 3 quick, 2 slow, and waited. The bolt slid back and the door opened. Clara's face was pale. "I saw them through the window. Who were they?" "Brennan's men." She swayed on her feet. Josiah caught her elbow, steadying her. "They didn't find us." "They found me. I persuaded them to leave." "How?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is, they'll be back. Probably with more men." He guided her to the chair. "We need to move." "I can't walk." "I know. I'm thinking." Sam appeared at Clara's side, his face frightened. "Are the bad men coming, Mama?" Clara pulled him close. "It's okay, sweetheart. Mr. Cole won't let them hurt us." Sam looked at Josiah with wide, trusting eyes. "You won't, will you?" Josiah felt something crack in his chest. That look, he'd seen it before, on another boy's face, in another lifetime. Daniel had looked at him exactly that way right before the fever took him. "Papa will make it better. Papa always makes it better." He hadn't made it better. He'd failed his son in the worst possible way by being utterly, completely helpless. But he wasn't helpless now. "No," Josiah said, his voice rough. "I won't let them hurt you." Sam nodded, solemnly satisfied. He didn't question the promise, didn't doubt it for a second. He simply believed. The weight of that trust settled on Josiah's shoulders like a physical thing. He turned away before the boy could see the emotion in his eyes. Night fell fast, as it always did in winter. Josiah barricaded the door and covered the windows with heavy blankets to hide the firelight. They ate in near darkness, speaking in whispers. "How did they find us?" Clara asked. "The storm should have covered our tracks." "It did, but they knew which direction you were heading. Probably had men spread out along every road out of Silver Creek." Josiah chewed slowly. "How many does Brennan have on his payroll?" "I don't know exactly. A dozen, maybe more. Plus the sheriff and his deputies." "The sheriff's in his pocket." "Everyone's in his pocket." Josiah absorbed this. "What about outside Silver Creek? The territorial marshal?" "He's in Helena. Weeks away even in good weather." "And the circuit judge?" Clara shook her head. "Brennan's brother-in-law." Josiah let out a low whistle. "He's got the whole territory sewn up." "Now you understand why I ran." "I understand." Josiah set down his plate. "But running's not going to work forever. Eventually, you'll have to fight." "With what? I'm a widow with a bad ankle and a 6-year-old. He's got money, men guns. You've got something better." Clara stared at him. "What?" "Truth." Josiah leaned forward. "Those documents you took, they're not just proof of what Brennan did to you. They're proof of what he is. A man like that doesn't forge one deed. He's been doing this for years, probably decades. Taking land, destroying families, building his empire on other people's bones." His eyes held hers. "You expose him, and every enemy he's ever made will come out of the woodwork. He'll be fighting on a dozen fronts at once." "But how do I expose him? The courts are his. The lawmen are his. I can't even walk into town without being arrested." "We don't go to his courts. We go over his head." "To who?" Josiah was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "You ever hear of a man named Thomas Preston?" Clara frowned. "The federal prosecutor. The one who took down the mining syndicate in Butte." "That's him. He's got a reputation for going after men like Brennan. Men who think they're above the law." "He's in Denver." "Yes. That's 300 miles. "I know." Clara laughed bitterly. "You might as well say he's on the moon." "Hear me out." Josiah moved closer. "You can't make that trip. Not with your ankle, not with Sam, not with Brennan's men hunting you. But I can." The words hung in the air. "You'd do that," Clara whispered. "You'd travel 300 miles in winter for someone you just met." Josiah didn't answer immediately. He looked at Sam, who had fallen asleep on the rug, the wooden horse clutched to his chest. "When I lost my family," he said slowly, "I thought God was punishing me. I thought I must have done something terrible, something unforgivable to deserve that kind of pain." He swallowed hard. "I spent 3 years trying to figure out what it was. 3 years of drinking, fighting, pushing away everyone who tried to help. 3 years of wishing I'd died with them." Clara reached out and touched his hand. He flinched, but didn't pull away. "And then you two showed up." Josiah's voice cracked. "A woman and a boy running for their lives, pounding on my door in a blizzard. And I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is what I've been waiting for. A chance to make things right." "You can't make things right by dying for us." "I'm not planning to die." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "But if I do, at least it'll be for something that matters." Clara's eyes filled with tears. "Josiah." He pulled his hand away gently. "Get some sleep. We'll talk more in the morning." He moved to his chair by the window and sat down, rifle across his knees. Outside, the night was silent and still. No movement, no sound. Just the vast frozen darkness. Clara watched him for a long time before closing her eyes. In the night, she dreamed of Thomas, not as he'd been at the end, pale and broken in the mine's cold earth, but as he'd been in life, laughing, dancing with her in their small cabin, spinning her around until she was dizzy with joy. "Be brave, Clara," he whispered in the dream. "I didn't die so you could give up." She woke with tears on her cheeks and the first light of dawn creeping through the blankets over the windows. Josiah was already awake, adding wood to the fire. "Bad dreams?" he asked without turning. "Just dreams." She wiped her face. "You? I don't dream anymore." Clara knew he was lying. She could see it in the shadows under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders. He dreamed all right. He just didn't let himself remember. Sam stirred on the rug, yawning hugely. "Morning, Mama. Morning, Mr. Cole." "Morning, son." Josiah handed him a piece of dried jerky. "Breakfast." Sam chewed happily. "Are we staying here today?" "For now." Josiah glanced at Clara. "Your mama and I need to talk about some grown-up things. Can you keep working on that horse?" "Sure." Sam retrieved his carving and his knife, the blade carefully dulled for safety, and settled into his corner. Josiah moved close to Clara and spoke in a low voice. "I've been thinking all night. Here's what I see: Brennan's men know you're in the area. They'll widen their search, knock on every door, check every cabin. It's only a matter of time before they come back here with more guns. So what do we do?" "We split up." Clara's heart lurched. "What?" "Not forever, just long enough to draw them off. I'll head east, make myself visible, leave a trail they can follow. You and Sam head west to Red Hollow. There's a woman there, a doctor named Martha Hayes. She owes me a favor. She'll hide you until I get back." "Get back from where?" "Denver. I'll take the documents to Preston, get the law on our side. Then I'll come for you." Clara shook her head. "That could take weeks, months." "I know. And if you don't come back," Josiah met her eyes, "then you find someone else to fight for you. Someone who can finish what we started." "I don't want someone else." The words came out before Clara could stop them. She blushed. "I mean, we don't know anyone else. You're the only person who's helped us." Josiah's expression softened. "Then I guess I better not die." Sam looked up from his carving. "Nobody's dying, right?" "Nobody's dying, sweetheart." Clara forced a smile. "Mr. Cole and I are just making plans." "Good." Sam went back to his horse. "I like Mr. Cole. He's nice." Clara and Josiah exchanged a look. "Out of the mouths of babes," Clara murmured. Josiah almost smiled. Almost. They spent the day preparing. Josiah gathered supplies, food, blankets, ammunition, and packed them into saddlebags. He had a horse in a small stable behind the cabin, a sturdy mare named Bess, who'd carried him through worse than this. "Can you ride?" he asked Clara. "I used to, before." "Good. Bess will carry you and Sam. She's gentle, won't spook easy." "What about you?" "I'll take the mule. Slower, but it'll do." Clara watched him work, marveling at his efficiency. Every movement had purpose. Every action was precise. "You've done this before," she said. "Planning escapes." Josiah paused. "I was a deputy once, long time ago." "What happened?" He was silent for a long moment. "I killed a man who needed killing. But he had friends in high places. They gave me a choice: leave or hang." "So you left?" "So I left." He resumed his packing. "Came up here to disappear. Thought I'd never deal with the law again. I'm sorry we dragged you back into this." Josiah stopped. He turned to face her, and for the first time she saw something vulnerable in his eyes. "Don't be," he said quietly. "I was disappearing too fast. Another year, maybe two, and there wouldn't have been anything left of me worth saving." He reached out and touched her face, just barely, his fingers tracing the curve of her cheek. Clara's breath caught. "You saved me first," he said. "You just don't know it yet." Then he turned away and continued packing, leaving Clara standing there with her heart pounding and her skin burning where he'd touched her. Night fell again. They ate. Sam practiced his whittling. Josiah cleaned his rifle. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the cabin walls, riders were moving closer. Neither of them slept much that night. Clara lay on the pallet Josiah had made for her, listening to every creak, every groan of wind, every shifting shadow. Her ankle throbbed, her mind raced. 300 miles, weeks of waiting, an uncertain future with a dangerous man hunting her. But somehow, impossibly, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. She turned her head to look at Josiah still sitting by the window, still watching the darkness. "Thank you," she whispered. He didn't turn, but she saw his shoulders relax slightly. "Get some rest, Clara. Tomorrow's going to be a long day." She closed her eyes, and for the first time since Thomas died, she slept without dreaming of loss. Morning came cold and clear. The storm had passed completely, leaving behind a world of blinding white. Josiah was up before dawn, saddling Bess and loading the mule. Sam was beside himself with excitement. "Are we really going on an adventure, Mama?" "Something like that, sweetheart." "Will Mr. Cole come with us?" Clara hesitated. "For a little while. Then he has to go do something important." "Will he come back?" Clara looked at Josiah, who had paused in his work to listen. "Yes," she said loud enough for him to hear. "He'll come back." Josiah met her eyes across the clearing. "Count on it," he said. They set out as the sun crested the eastern peaks. Clara rode Bess Sam tucked in front of her, wrapped in blankets. Her ankle protested every jostle, but she gritted her teeth and said nothing. Josiah led the way on the mule rifle ready. They traveled in silence for the first hour, following a narrow path through dense pines. The snow was deep, but not impassable. Bess picked her way carefully, sure-footed and calm. Then Josiah stopped. He held up a hand. Clara reined in, Bess heart pounding. "What is it?" Josiah pointed. Ahead, where the trail curved around a rocky outcrop, smoke rose into the pale morning sky. Someone was waiting for them. Josiah's hand moved to his rifle. He didn't raise it, not yet, but his fingers curled around the stock with familiar ease. "Stay here," he said quietly. "Josiah, stay here." "Clara, keep Sam quiet." He dismounted and moved forward on foot, using the trees for cover. The smoke curled lazily into the morning sky, too controlled for a wildfire, too large for a traveler's cookfire. Someone had made camp. And they'd made it right in the middle of the only trail to Red Hollow. Josiah crept closer, his boots silent in the snow. He could hear voices now, low and rough, punctuated by occasional laughter. Men's voices. More than two. He reached the edge of the tree line and peered through the branches. 4 men sat around a fire, rifles propped against nearby rocks. Their horses were tied to a fallen log, steam rising from their nostrils in the cold air. One of the men was poking at something in a skillet, while the others passed a flask between them. Josiah recognized 2 of them from the day before, the stocky one and the thin one who'd come to his cabin. The other 2 were new, but they had the same look. Hard, paid, dangerous. They were blocking the trail on purpose. Josiah backed away slowly, returning to where Clara waited with Sam. 4 men, he said, keeping his voice low. Same ones from before, plus 2 more. They're set up right across the path. Clara's face went pale. They knew we'd come this way. Looks like it. Josiah's jaw tightened. Brennan's smarter than I gave him credit for. He's got men on every route out of the mountains. So what do we do? Josiah looked at the terrain around them. Steep slopes on either side, dense forest, deep snow. Going around would take hours, maybe days, and there was no guarantee they wouldn't run into more men. We can't go around, he said finally. And we can't go back. Then we go through. Josiah stared at her. You're serious. Do we have a choice? He wanted to argue. He wanted to tell her it was too dangerous that she should take Sam and hide while he dealt with the men alone. But he saw the steel in her eyes, the same steel he'd seen in her son. She wasn't asking permission. She was stating fact. All right, he said slowly. But we do this my way. You stay back with Sam until I give the signal. If things go wrong, you ride hard for Red Hollow. Don't stop. Don't look back. And leave you behind. If that's what it takes. Clara's voice hardened. I won't do that. Clara. I said no. She leaned forward, her eyes blazing. I've already lost one man I cared about. I'm not losing another. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Neither was ready to examine. Josiah looked away first. Fine. But you stay back until I call for you. Understood? She nodded tightly. Josiah turned to Sam, who had been listening with wide eyes. Hey, partner. I need you to do something important. What? I need you to be brave. Can you do that? Sam swallowed hard, then nodded. I can be brave. Good man. Josiah put a hand on his shoulder. Whatever happens, you stay with your mama. You keep her safe. That's your job now. I will, Mr. Cole. I know you will. Josiah squeezed the boy's shoulder once, then turned and started toward the camp. He didn't look back. The men around the fire were still laughing when Josiah stepped out of the trees. Morning, gentlemen. 4 heads snapped around. 4 hands reached for weapons. Easy. Josiah said, his rifle already leveled. I just want to talk. The stocky one, the one who'd done most of the talking at the cabin, slowly lowered his hand from his pistol. Well, well, the hermit from the mountains. He grinned, showing yellow teeth. We were just talking about you. I'm flattered. Mr. Brennan's real curious about you. Says anyone who'd shelter that woman must be either stupid or suicidal. The stocky man tilted his head. Which is it? Neither. I just don't like being told what to do. One of the new men, a tall fellow with a scar across his cheek, stood slowly. You're outnumbered, friend, 4 to 1. I can count. Then you know how this ends. I know how you think it ends. Josiah's voice was calm, almost casual. But here's the thing. I've been in more gunfights than I can remember, killed more men than I care to count. And I've noticed something interesting. Yeah. What's that? The first man to move is always the first man to die. Silence. The 4 men exchanged glances. The stocky one licked his lips nervously. Look, he said, his tone shifting. We don't have a quarrel with you. We just want the woman and the kid. Hand them over and you can walk away. No. Be reasonable. I said no. Josiah's finger tightened on the trigger. Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to get on your horses and ride back to Silver Creek. You're going to tell Brennan that the widow and her son are under my protection, and if he sends more men, I'll send them back in pieces. The scarred man laughed. You're bluffing. Try me. Another long silence. The fire crackled and popped. Then the thin man from before, the one who'd seemed smarter than the rest, spoke up. Boys, maybe we should think about this. Shut up, Hicks, the stocky one snapped. I'm just saying Mr. Brennan didn't pay us enough to die. This fella's got nothing to lose. Look at his eyes. He means every word. I said shut up. But the damage was done. Doubt had crept into the group, spreading like frost on glass. Josiah saw his opening. Your friend's got sense, he said. Listen to him. Walk away while you still can. The stocky man's face reddened. His hand twitched toward his gun. Don't, Josiah warned. You think you can take all 4 of us. I think I can take you before you clear leather, and I think your friends will spend the rest of their lives wondering if they're next. For a long, terrible moment, no one moved. Then the thin man Hicks raised his hands. I'm out, he said. This ain't worth dying for. He walked to his horse, mounted up, and rode away without looking back. The scarred man hesitated, then followed. That left the stocky one and another man who hadn't spoken at all. "Last chance," Josiah said quietly. The stocky man's face twisted with rage. For a second, Josiah was sure he was going to draw. His muscles tensed, ready to fire. But then the silent man grabbed his partner's arm. "Marcus, let it go. He's making fools of us. He's giving us our lives. Take the gift." Marcus glared at Josiah with pure hatred. "This ain't over, hermit. Mr. Brennan, don't forget." "Neither do I." The two men mounted their horses and rode away, disappearing into the trees. Josiah stood alone by the fire, his rifle still raised until he could no longer hear hoofbeats. Then slowly he lowered the weapon. His hands were shaking. He took a deep breath, steadying himself, then turned and waved toward the tree line. Clara emerged on horseback, Sam clinging to her. "They're gone," she asked, her voice trembling. "For now." She looked at him with something like awe. "You faced down 4 armed men by yourself." "I've done it before." "That doesn't make it any less terrifying." Josiah almost smiled. "Terror keeps you sharp." They continued down the trail, past the abandoned campfire, past the hoofprints in the snow. Sam was quiet, his face pressed against his mother's back. "Is Mr. Cole a hero, Mama?" he asked after a while. Clara looked at Josiah riding ahead. "Yes, sweetheart. I think he is." The sun was high when they reached the valley. Red Hollow lay ahead, a small cluster of buildings nestled between 2 ridges. Smoke rose from chimneys. People moved in the streets. Civilization. Josiah reined in his mule at the edge of town. "Martha Hayes lives on the far end," he said. "Small house with a red door. She'll take care of you." "You're not coming." "I can't be seen with you. Brennan's got eyes everywhere. If people know you're connected to me, it puts a target on your back." Clara's face fell. "So, this is goodbye?" "For now." Josiah hesitated, then reached into his saddlebag. He pulled out a small leather pouch and handed it to her. "There's money in there. Enough for a few weeks at least. Give the documents to Martha, she'll know how to keep them safe." Clara took the pouch, her fingers brushing his. "Josiah." "Don't." His voice was rough. "Don't say anything that'll make this harder." "I have to say something. You saved our lives, more than once. How do I just let you ride away?" Josiah looked at her for a long moment. Her hair was tangled. Her face was pale. Her dress was torn and stained. She'd been through hell and kept walking. She was the strongest person he'd ever met. "You let me ride away," he said quietly, "by believing I'll come back." Tears spilled down Clara's cheeks. "Promise me." "I promise." He reached out and cupped her face with one hand, a mirror of that moment in the cabin, but different now. Heavier. More real. "Wait for me, Clara Whitmore. I'll find you." She nodded, unable to speak. Josiah turned to Sam. "Take care of your mama, partner." "I will." Sam's voice was thick. But you're coming back, right?" "Wild horses couldn't stop me." He tousled the boy's hair one last time, then kicked his mule into motion. He didn't look back. Couldn't look back because he knew if he did, he'd never leave. Clara watched him until he disappeared over the ridge. "Come on, sweetheart," she said softly. "Let's find that red door." Martha Hayes was exactly what Josiah had described, a weathered woman in her 60s, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at Clara, and Sam asked no questions, and ushered them inside. "Josiah sent word you might be coming," she said, bolting the door behind them. "Didn't say much, but he never does." "You know him well," Martha snorted. "Well as anyone knows Josiah Cole, which is to say not very. He's the kind of man who keeps his past in a locked box and throws away the key." She studied Clara with sharp eyes. "But he must trust you. He doesn't stick his neck out for just anyone. Clara sank into a chair, suddenly exhausted. Her ankle was screaming, her whole body ached, and the adrenaline that had kept her going was finally draining away. "Can I see your leg?" Martha asked. Clara nodded. The older woman examined the ankle with practiced efficiency. "Josiah did a fair job wrapping this. You'll need to stay off it for a week at least. Longer if you want it to heal proper." "I don't have a week. You've got as long as I say you've got." Martha's tone brooked no argument. "You're under my roof now. My rules." Sam tugged at Clara's sleeve. "Mama, I'm hungry." Martha's expression softened. "Course you are, child. Come on, let's see what we've got in the kitchen." She led Sam away, leaving Clara alone with her thoughts. The house was small but clean, filled with the smell of dried herbs and wood smoke. Medical books lined the shelves. A faded photograph hung on the wall, a young couple smiling their whole lives ahead of them. Clara closed her eyes. "Wait for me." The words echoed in her mind like a prayer. Days passed. Clara's ankle slowly improved. Sam found a stray cat behind Martha's house and adopted it with the fierce devotion only a child could muster. Martha proved to be a formidable guardian. She fed them, sheltered them, and turned away anyone who came asking questions with a glare that could curdle milk. But there was no word from Josiah. Clara tried not to worry. Denver was far. The journey would take time, especially in winter. There were 100 reasons for silence, none of them necessarily bad. But every night she lay awake listening to the wind, wondering if he was alive. 1 week became 2. 2 became 3. Sam stopped asking when Mr. Cole would come back. He'd learned that the question only made his mother cry. Then on a cold evening in the 3rd week, a knock came at the door. Martha answered it, her hand on the pistol she kept in her apron pocket. A man stood on the threshold. Tall, thin, dressed in expensive clothes that looked out of place in Red Hollow. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm looking for a woman named Clara Whitmore. I was told she might be here." Martha's face was stone. "Never heard of her." "Are you certain it's very important that I find her? I have news about a mutual friend." "I said I never heard of her. Now get off my property before I—" "Martha!" Clara appeared behind the older woman, her heart pounding. "Who are you?" The man smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. "My name is Vincent Cross. I work for Silas Brennan." Clara's blood turned to ice. "Before you panic," Cross continued smoothly, "I should tell you that I'm not here to harm you. Quite the opposite, in fact. I have a message from Mr. Brennan. I don't want to hear anything from that murderer, even if it concerns the life of Josiah Cole." Clara's heart stopped. "What?" Cross reached into his coat, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a piece of paper. "Mr. Cole was captured 3 days ago, approximately 20 miles from Denver. He's currently being held at Mr. Brennan's mining camp. Mr. Brennan has authorized me to make you an offer." Martha stepped forward. "Don't listen to him, Clara. It's a trap." "Perhaps," Cross acknowledged. "But the offer is genuine. Return the stolen documents and Mr. Cole goes free. Refuse and—" He shrugged elegantly. "Well, Mr. Brennan is not known for his patience." Clara's hands trembled. The documents. Everything Josiah had fought for. Everything they'd risked their lives to protect. How do I know he's even alive? Cross reached into his coat again and produced a second item, a small carved wooden horse. Sam's horse, the one Josiah had been teaching him to make. "Mr. Cole asked me to give this to you as proof. He said you'd understand." Clara took the horse with shaking fingers. She remembered Josiah's hands guiding Sam's, his patient voice, his rare fleeting smiles. "What guarantee do I have that you'll release him?" "None whatsoever." Cross's smile widened. "But you don't have a choice, do you? Without those documents, you have no leverage. With them, you might save a man's life. And if I give you the documents, Brennan will just come for us anyway." "Possibly. But at least Mr. Cole will be alive." Cross tilted his head. "The choice is yours, Mrs. Whitmore. I'll return tomorrow morning for your answer." He tipped his hat and walked away, disappearing into the darkness. Martha slammed the door behind him. "You can't do this, Clara. The moment you hand over those papers, you're dead. All of you." "I know." "Then, I know." Clara's voice cracked. "But I can't let him die. Not for me. Not when I can stop it. He wouldn't want you to sacrifice everything." "That's exactly what he'd want." Tears streamed down her face. "He's already sacrificed everything for us. How can I do any less for him?" Martha opened her mouth to argue, then closed it, because she knew Clara was right. Sam appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Mama, what's wrong?" Clara gathered him into her arms, holding him tight. "Nothing, sweetheart. Go back to sleep." "I heard shouting." "Just a visitor. Nothing to worry about." Sam looked up at her with those two old eyes. "Is Mr. Cole okay?" Clara's heart shattered. "I don't know, baby. I don't know." That night, Clara made her decision. She wrote a letter to Thomas Preston in Denver, explaining everything: Brennan's crimes, the forged deed, the witnesses who could testify against him. She gave it to Martha with instructions to send it if she didn't return. Then she retrieved the documents from their hiding place. "You're really going to do this?" Martha said. "I have to. Brennan will kill you both the moment he has what he wants." "Maybe." Clara tucked the documents into her coat. "But at least Josiah will have a chance to escape. And maybe, just maybe, Preston will get that letter in time." Martha shook her head slowly. "You're either the bravest woman I've ever met, or the most foolish. Probably both." At dawn, Clara met Vincent Cross at the edge of town. She left Sam with Martha despite his tearful protests. "Mama, don't go. Please don't go." "I have to, sweetheart. But I'll come back. I promise." "That's what Mr. Cole said." Clara's heart broke all over again. "I know, baby. But this time we're both coming back. Together." She kissed him one last time, then turned and walked away. Cross was waiting with 2 horses. "A wise decision, Mrs. Whitmore. Just take me to Josiah." "All in good time." He gestured to one of the horses. "It's a long ride. I suggest you make yourself comfortable." Clara mounted up her ankle, protesting fiercely. As they rode away from Red Hollow, she looked back one last time. Sam stood in Martha's doorway, watching her go. He raised one small hand in farewell. Clara raised hers in return. Then she turned her face forward and rode toward whatever fate awaited her. The mining camp was exactly what Clara had expected, a sprawling complex of tents and wooden structures surrounded by armed men and the constant noise of industry. Smoke belched from chimneys. Ore carts rattled along narrow tracks. Workers moved like ghosts, their faces gaunt and hollow. This was Brennan's empire, built on blood and suffering. Cross led her to a large building at the center of the camp, the only structure with glass windows and a proper roof. "Mr. Brennan is expecting you," he said, dismounting. Clara followed him inside. The interior was lavish, a stark contrast to the squalor outside. Fine carpets, mahogany furniture, crystal decanters filled with amber liquid. A fire blazed in an enormous hearth, and there, seated behind a massive desk, was Silas Brennan. He was smaller than Clara had imagined, slight, almost delicate, with thinning hair and wire-rimmed spectacles. He looked more like a banker than a tyrant. But his eyes were cold and dead like stones at the bottom of a frozen river. "Mrs. Whitmore." He rose, spreading his arms in mock welcome. "How delightful to finally meet you." "Where is he?" Brennan tisked. "No pleasantries, no polite conversation. I must say I expected better manners from a woman of your breeding. Where is he?" Brennan's smile didn't waver. "All in good time, my dear. First, the documents." Clara pulled the papers from her coat and held them up. First I see Josiah, alive and unharmed. Brennan studied her for a long moment. You're not in a position to make demands. And you're not getting these documents until I know he's safe. Something flickered in Brennan's eyes. Annoyance, perhaps, or grudging respect. Very well. He nodded to Cross. Bring him. Cross disappeared through a side door. Clara waited, her heart hammering. Minutes passed. Each one felt like an hour. Then the door opened and 2 guards dragged Josiah into the room. He was barely recognizable. His face was bruised and swollen, his clothes torn and bloodied. He moved like a man held together by will alone. But when he saw Clara, his eyes widened. "No," he croaked. "No, what are you doing here?" "I came for you." "You shouldn't have. You shouldn't." "Enough." Brennan's voice cut through the room like a blade. How touching, truly. But we have business to conduct. He held out his hand. "The documents, Mrs. Whitmore." Clara looked at Josiah. At the man who had saved her life, who had given her hope, who had become something she never expected to find again. She looked at Brennan with his dead eyes and his smug smile. And she made her choice. Here. She handed over the documents. Brennan took them, leafing through the pages with evident satisfaction. "Finally," he murmured. "That troublesome little problem solved." He nodded to the guards. "Kill them both." The guards moved forward, pistols drawn. Josiah lunged. Even beaten, even broken, he threw himself at the nearest man with the fury of a wounded animal. His shoulder caught the guard in the midsection, driving him backward into the wall. The second guard raised his weapon, but Clara was already moving. She grabbed the crystal decanter from Brennan's desk and hurled it with all her strength. Glass shattered against the guard's face. He screamed, clawing at his eyes. "Run!" Josiah shouted, grappling with the first guard. "Clara, run!" But she didn't run. Instead, she grabbed a letter opener from the desk and drove it into the arm of the guard Josiah was fighting. The man howled and released his grip. Josiah didn't hesitate. He seized the guard's pistol and fired. The second guard dropped. Brennan was already at the door, screaming for reinforcements. "We have to go," Josiah said, grabbing Clara's hand. "Now!" They burst through a side door into a narrow hallway. Behind them, shouts and footsteps echoed through the building. "This way." Josiah pulled her left, then right, navigating the maze of corridors with surprising certainty. "How do you know where you're going?" "They walked me through here when they brought me in. I memorized every turn." Of course he had. Even half-dead Josiah Cole was still thinking 3 steps ahead. They emerged into the cold morning air. The mining camp spread out before them, crawling with workers and guards. "The horses," Clara said, pointing to where Cross had left them tied. "Too exposed. We'd be shot before we mounted." "Then what?" A shout went up behind them. Guards poured out of the building, weapons raised. Josiah shoved Clara behind a stack of ore crates and returned fire. One guard fell, then another. "There's too many," Clara breathed. "I know." "Josiah, I know." His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Listen to me. When I give the signal, you run for those horses and you don't look back." "No." "Clara." "I said no." She grabbed his arm, her eyes blazing. "I didn't come all this way to watch you die. We leave together or we don't leave at all." Josiah stared at her. Even now, with bullets flying and death closing in, she refused to abandon him. Something shifted in his chest. Something he thought he'd lost forever. "All right," he said quietly. "Together." He took her hand. They ran. Bullets whizzed past them, kicking up dirt and snow. Clara's ankles screamed with every step, but she kept moving, kept running, Josiah's hand the only anchor in the chaos. They were 20 feet from the horses when Clara stumbled. She went down hard, her injured ankle finally giving out completely. Pain exploded through her leg, white-hot and blinding. Josiah skidded to a stop. "Go!" she gasped. "Leave me and go!" He looked at her, then at the guards closing in from all sides. Then he did something that made no sense at all. He laughed. "What's so funny?" "Nothing." He knelt beside her, his battered face splitting into a grin. "I just realized something." "What?" "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Before Clara could respond, the thunder of hooves filled the air. Riders burst into the camp from 3 directions at once. A dozen men, maybe more, armed with rifles and wearing the unmistakable badges of federal marshals. Leading them was a man Clara had never seen before, tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of someone who expected to be obeyed. "United States Marshals!" he bellowed. "Drop your weapons!" Brennan's guards hesitated, looking at each other in confusion. "I said drop them. Anyone still holding iron in 5 seconds gets buried in it." One by one, the weapons clattered to the ground. The silver-haired man dismounted and strode toward Clara and Josiah, his boots crunching in the snow. "Mrs. Whitmore, I presume?" Clara nodded, too stunned to speak. "I'm Thomas Preston. I received your letter." He looked at Josiah. "And you must be the fool who tried to reach me alone in the dead of winter." Josiah managed a weak smile. "That would be me." "You made it within 15 miles of Denver before Brennan's men caught up with you. My scouts found your trail and followed it back here." Preston shook his head. "Brave. Stupid, but brave. Story of my life." Preston turned to his men. "Find Brennan. I want him in chains within the hour." "That won't be necessary." The voice came from behind them. Silas Brennan stepped out of the building, his hands raised. He was smiling, that same cold, dead smile that made Clara's skin crawl. "I surrender, Marshal Preston, peacefully and without resistance." Preston's eyes narrowed. "That's surprisingly cooperative of you." "I'm a reasonable man, and I'm confident that any charges against me will be dismissed once the facts come to light." Brennan's gaze flicked to Clara. "After all, what evidence do you have?" "The word of a hysterical widow and a drifter with a violent past." "The documents," Clara started. "What documents?" Brennan's smile widened. "You mean these?" He held up a handful of ashes. "Burned them the moment you handed them over. A necessary precaution, you understand. Now, where is your proof? Where is your evidence?" Clara's heart sank. He was right. Without the documents, it was her word against his. And in a territory where he owned judges and lawmen alike, her word was worthless. She'd failed. After everything, all the running, all the fighting, all the sacrifice, she'd failed. Then Josiah spoke. "You know Brennan, for a smart man, you're awfully stupid." Brennan's smile faltered. "Excuse me. Those documents Clara gave you, did you actually look at them before you burned them?" A flicker of uncertainty crossed Brennan's face. "Of course I did. They were the original deed and the forged. They were copies." Silence. Josiah pushed himself to his feet, swaying slightly, but somehow still standing. "I made copies before I left. 3 sets. One went to Marshal Preston's office in Denver, one went to a newspaper editor in Helena, and one—" He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded sheaf of papers. "One I kept on me. The originals." Clara stared at him. "You never told me." "Didn't want to risk you knowing in case they caught you. Figured if Brennan thought he had the real thing, he wouldn't look any further." Brennan's face had gone white. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Josiah handed the papers to Preston. "Check for yourself." Preston examined the documents carefully. His expression grew grimmer with each page. Forgery, bribery, fraud, conspiracy to commit murder. He looked up at Brennan. "You're going to hang." "This is absurd. Those documents are fabricated." "By your own clerk, with your own signature, on your own letterhead." Preston nodded to his men. "Take him." 2 marshals grabbed Brennan's arms. For the first time, real fear showed in his eyes. "You can't do this. I have friends, powerful friends. I'll have you all destroyed. Your friends are about to have problems of their own. Preston's voice was ice. The territorial governor has already been informed of your activities. By tomorrow, every man on your payroll will be facing charges. Your empire is finished, Brennan. You just haven't accepted it yet. Brennan struggled as the marshals dragged him away, screaming threats and promises of revenge. But his voice grew fainter and fainter until finally, mercifully, it faded to nothing. Clara slumped against Josiah, all the strength draining from her body. "It's over," she whispered. "It's really over." Josiah put his arm around her, holding her close. "It's over." For a long moment they just stood there, leaning on each other, surrounded by the wreckage of Brennan's empire. Then Clara looked up at him. "You made copies." "I made copies. You didn't tell me." "I didn't tell you. You let me think I'd sacrificed everything for nothing." Josiah met her eyes. "I'm sorry. I couldn't risk." She kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't sweet. It was fierce and desperate and full of everything she couldn't put into words: the fear, the relief, the bone-deep gratitude for this stubborn, impossible man who had walked into her life and refused to leave. When she finally pulled back, Josiah looked dazed. "What was that for?" "For saving us, for keeping the copies, for being the most infuriating man I've ever met." "I think that's supposed to be a compliment. Take it however you want." Josiah's lips curved into a smile, a real smile, the kind that reached his eyes. "Yes, ma'am." Preston cleared his throat loudly. "As touching as this is, we need to get you both medical attention. Mrs. Whitmore, that ankle needs to be properly set. And you, Mr. Cole, look like you've been trampled by a herd of cattle." "Feels like it too." "Then let's get moving. We've got a long ride back to civilization." The journey to Red Hollow took 2 days. Clara spent most of it in a wagon, her leg propped up on pillows, drifting in and out of sleep. Every time she woke, Josiah was there riding alongside, watching over her, making sure she was comfortable. He barely slept. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the way his shoulders sagged when he thought no one was looking. But whenever she suggested he rest, he just shook his head. "Plenty of time to sleep when we get there." "You're going to collapse." "I've gone longer without." "That doesn't make it healthy." Josiah just smiled. "You worry too much. And you don't worry enough." They bickered like that for most of the trip. Clara found she didn't mind. There was something comforting about it, the easy back and forth, the way he never took offense, no matter how sharp her tongue got. It felt like home. They reached Red Hollow at sunset. Martha was waiting on her porch, Sam bouncing impatiently beside her. The moment he saw the wagon, he broke free and sprinted toward them. "Mama, Mama!" Clara barely had time to brace herself before he launched into her arms. "Careful, sweetheart. Mama's leg." "I don't care about your leg. I thought you were dead. I thought you were never coming back." "I know, baby, I know. But I'm here now. I'm here." Sam pulled back, tears streaming down his face. Then he saw Josiah. "Mr. Cole." He threw himself at Josiah with equal enthusiasm. Josiah caught him wincing slightly, but hiding it well. "Hey, partner. Miss me?" "I thought the bad men got you." "They tried. Didn't work out for them." Sam laughed through his tears. "You beat them. We beat them. Me and your mama. Together." Sam looked between them, his face lighting up. "Does that mean the bad man is gone? The one who wanted to hurt us?" Josiah knelt down, meeting the boy's eyes. "He's gone, son. He's never going to hurt you or your mama again." "You promise?" "I promise." Sam nodded solemnly. Then, with the sudden emotional shifts only children can manage, he grinned. "I finished my horse. The wooden one. Do you want to see it?" "I'd love to." Sam grabbed Josiah's hand and dragged him toward the house, chattering excitedly about everything he'd done while they were gone. Josiah went willingly, listening with genuine interest. Clara watched them go, her heart so full it hurt. Martha appeared beside her. "That man's going to make a good father." Clara startled. What? Martha's weathered face creased into a knowing smile. Don't play dumb with me, Clara Whitmore. I've got eyes. I've seen the way you look at him, the way he looks at you. It's not... We haven't. Not yet. Martha patted her arm. But you will. Some things are just meant to be. Clara opened her mouth to argue, then closed it. Because deep down, she knew Martha was right. That night, after Sam had been fed and bathed and put to bed, Clara sat on Martha's porch, watching the stars emerge one by one. The door creaked open behind her. Mind if I join you? She looked up. Josiah stood in the doorway, cleaned up and bandaged, looking almost human again. Please. He lowered himself into the chair beside her, moving stiffly, but without complaint. For a while, neither of them spoke. The silence was comfortable, the kind that comes from having nothing left to prove. I've been thinking, Josiah said finally. About what? About what comes next. Clara's heart quickened. And Preston says the territorial court will want you to testify at Brennan's trial. Could take months. I know. After that, once everything's settled, you'll get your land back. The real deed legally recognized. You and Sam can go home. Clara was quiet for a moment. And what about you? Josiah didn't answer right away. He stared out at the darkness, his face unreadable. I've spent 3 years hiding from the world, he said slowly. Hiding from myself. I thought if I stayed alone long enough, the pain would go away. He shook his head. It didn't. It just got heavier. Josiah, let me finish. He turned to look at her. When you and Sam showed up, I thought God was playing a cruel joke, sending me a woman and a child to remind me of everything I'd lost, everything I'd failed to protect. Clara's eyes stung with tears. But that's not what happened, Josiah continued. Instead of reminding me of my failures, you reminded me why I wanted to live in the first place. Why fighting matters. Why love matters. His voice dropped. You saved me, Clara. Just by being who you are. A tear slipped down Clara's cheek. I didn't save you. You saved us. Maybe we saved each other. He reached out and took her hand. His fingers were rough, calloused, scarred, the hands of a man who'd worked hard and fought harder. But they were gentle as they intertwined with hers. I don't know what the future holds, Josiah said. I don't know if I'd make a good husband, or a good father, or a good anything. I've spent too long being nobody to remember how to be somebody. Josiah. But I know I want to try. With you, with Sam, if you'll have me. Clara's heart was pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Are you asking what I think you're asking? I'm asking if you'll let me stick around. Not as a protector or a guardian or whatever else I've been calling myself, but as something more, something real. He squeezed her hand. I'm asking if you'll give me a chance to be part of your family. For a long moment, Clara just looked at him. At this broken, beautiful man who had walked into her life and turned everything upside down. Then she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Josiah let out a breath, a sound of pure relief, like a man who'd been drowning finally breaking the surface. Thank God, he murmured. I was terrified you'd say no. You faced down armed men without flinching, but asking me made you terrified. The men couldn't break my heart. Clara laughed, tears streaming down her face. You impossible man. You're impossible man, if you'll have me. I already said yes. I know. I just like hearing it. She kissed him again, softer this time, slower, a promise instead of a declaration. When they finally broke apart, Josiah rested his hand against her cheek. Sam's going to have questions. Sam already adores you. He's been waiting for this since the day you carried me into your cabin. That was only a few weeks ago. Children know. They always know. Josiah was quiet for a moment. I'm scared, he admitted. I failed my first family. What if I fail you too? Clara covered his hand with hers. You didn't fail them, Josiah. The fever took them. That wasn't your fault. I couldn't save them. No. But you can't save everyone. All you can do is love them while they're here. She looked into his eyes. And I know you'll love us with everything you have. That's all I'm asking for. Josiah's eyes glistened. I will, he said hoarsely. I swear I will. I know. They sat together on the porch until the moon rose high, talking about everything and nothing. About Sam's education, about the land they'd reclaim, about whether to keep Josiah's cabin or build a new house on Clara's property. About the future they'd build together. Inside the house, Sam slept peacefully, dreaming of horses and heroes and the family he'd always wanted. And somewhere far away, in a cold cell awaiting trial, Silas Brennan raged against bars that would never open again. Justice, it seemed, had a long memory. The next morning, Sam woke to find Josiah and his mother sitting at the breakfast table holding hands. He stopped in the doorway, his eyes going wide. Mama. Yes, sweetheart. Does this mean... Is Mr. Cole going to stay? Clara looked at Josiah. Josiah looked at Sam. Actually, partner, I wanted to ask you something. Sam approached the table cautiously. What? Josiah knelt down, putting himself at the boy's eye level. How would you feel about me marrying your mama? Sam's mouth fell open. For real. For real. And you'd live with us forever. That's the plan. And I could call you... Sam hesitated. I could call you Pa. Josiah's voice cracked. I'd be honored. Sam launched himself at Josiah so hard he nearly knocked him over. Josiah caught him and held him tight. His eyes squeezed shut, his shoulders shaking with silent emotion. I've been waiting and waiting. Sam sobbed into his shoulder. I knew you'd come back. I knew you'd stay. Mama said to believe, and I believed, and now you're here. I'm here, son. I'm not going anywhere. Clara watched them, tears running freely down her face. Martha appeared in the doorway, took one look at the scene, and promptly burst into tears herself. Well, she managed, dabbing at her eyes with her apron. I suppose this calls for a celebration breakfast. Nobody argued. They ate pancakes and bacon and fresh eggs, laughing and talking and planning. Sam couldn't stop grinning. Clara couldn't stop crying. And Josiah, for the first time in 3 years, looked truly, genuinely happy. After breakfast, he took Sam outside to check on the horses. Clara watched through the window as they walked across the yard, Sam's small hand clasped firmly in Josiah's larger one. Martha came to stand beside her. You did good, Clara. I got lucky. Luck had nothing to do with it. You fought for your family. You never gave up even when everything seemed hopeless. Martha squeezed her shoulder. Your husband would be proud. Clara touched the window glass, watching Josiah lift Sam onto a horse's back. I think he would, she said softly. I think he'd be happy I found someone to love us. He is happy. Wherever he is, he's smiling. Clara believed it. Outside, Sam was laughing as Josiah led the horse in a slow circle. The morning sun caught his face, illuminating the pure joy written there. And watching them, Clara felt something she'd thought was lost forever. Hope. The weeks that followed passed like a dream. Clara testified at Silas Brennan's trial, her voice steady and clear as she recounted every injustice, every theft, every threat. Josiah sat in the front row, Sam beside him, both of them watching her with fierce pride. When the verdict came guilty on all counts, the courtroom erupted. But Clara felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Only relief. A weight she'd carried for so long finally lifting from her shoulders. Brennan was sentenced to hang. She didn't attend the execution. Neither did Josiah. Some things didn't need witnessing to be believed. They knew justice had been served. That was enough. The land was returned to her within the month. The territorial court voided Brennan's forged deed and reinstated Clara's original claim. She held the document in her hands, staring at her name printed there in official ink, and felt Thomas smiling down at her from somewhere beyond. "We did it," she whispered to him. "We kept our home." Josiah found her crying on the porch that evening. "Clara, what's wrong?" She shook her head, wiping her eyes. "Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. For the first time in years, everything's right." He sat down beside her and pulled her close. "Then why the tears?" "Because I'm happy. Because I'm terrified. Because I don't know how to feel this much at once." Josiah kissed the top of her head. "You don't have to know. You just have to feel it." She leaned into him, drawing strength from his warmth. "When do we leave?" "Whenever you're ready." Clara looked out at the fading sunset. "Tomorrow," she said. "I want to go home." The journey back to Clara's land took 3 days. They traveled slowly, stopping often to rest the horses and give Clara's ankle time to recover. It was nearly healed now, but Josiah insisted on caution. "We've got time," he said whenever she complained. "No need to rush." "You're worse than Martha." "I'll take that as a compliment." Sam rode with Josiah most of the way, peppering him with endless questions about horses, guns, cowboys, and everything else a 6-year-old found fascinating. Josiah answered each one patiently, never dismissing even the silliest inquiries. "Pa, why do horses sleep standing up?" "So they can run if something scares them." "Do you sleep standing up?" "Not anymore." "Did you used to?" "Only when I was too tired to sit down." Sam considered this gravely. "I'm going to try sleeping standing up tonight. Let me know how that works out for you." Clara listened to them with a smile, marveling at how naturally Josiah had stepped into the role of father. It was as if he'd been waiting his whole life for this, for a child to love, for a family to protect, for a purpose beyond mere survival. Maybe he had been. On the 3rd day, as the sun began its descent toward the western peaks, they crested a ridge, and Clara saw it. Her land. The cabin was still standing, weathered and neglected, but whole. The fields stretched out behind it, dormant under a light dusting of late-season snow. The creek that ran along the property's edge glinted silver in the fading light. Home. Clara's breath caught in her throat. "Mama, is that it?" Sam asked excitedly. "Is that our house?" "That's it, sweetheart. That's home." "It's so big." "It's really not that big." "It's bigger than Mrs. Martha's house." "Well, yes, slightly." Josiah reined in his horse beside her. "What do you think?" Clara couldn't speak. She just stared at the cabin, tears streaming down her face. All those months of running, of hiding, of fighting for survival. All those nights of wondering if she'd ever see this place again. And now here it was waiting for her just as she remembered it. "I think," she finally managed, "that I'm ready to come home." They rode down the slope together. The cabin needed work. That much was clear the moment they stepped inside. Dust covered every surface. Mice had gotten into the pantry. The roof leaked in 2 places, and the door hung crooked on its hinges. But the bones were good. The walls were solid. And with effort, with time, it could be everything they needed. "We've got our work cut out for us," Josiah said, surveying the damage. "Afraid of a little labor." "Ma'am, I've been afraid of labor my whole life. That's why I became a lawman." Clara laughed, really laughed, the kind that came from somewhere deep inside. "Well, too bad. You're a farmer now. Or you will be." "Farmer, husband, father." Josiah shook his head in mock dismay. What happened to the hermit who just wanted to be left alone? He met a stubborn woman who wouldn't take no for an answer. Ah, yes, I remember her. Showed up half frozen on his doorstep and refused to leave. You carried me inside. Biggest mistake of my life. Clara swatted his arm. Take that back. Never. Sam came running in from outside, his face bright with excitement. Pa, there's a barn and a creek, and I saw a deer. Did you now? It was huge, bigger than a horse. I doubt that very much. It was... Come look. Sam grabbed Josiah's hand and dragged him outside. Josiah shot Clara a helpless look over his shoulder. She just smiled and waved. This was her family now. Chaotic, imperfect, wonderful. She wouldn't trade it for anything. Spring arrived slowly, as it always did in the mountains. The snow retreated inch by inch, revealing brown earth and dormant grass. Streams swelled with meltwater. Birds returned from their winter journeys, filling the air with song. And Clara's cabin transformed. Josiah fixed the roof first, then the door, then the dozens of small problems that had accumulated during her absence. He worked from dawn to dusk, rarely stopping except to eat or play with Sam. "You're going to exhaust yourself," Clara warned him. "I'll rest when it's done." That's what my father used to say, right before he collapsed from overwork. Josiah paused, hammer in hand. "Your father, he was a farmer too. Worked himself to death trying to keep our family fed during the hard years." Clara's voice softened. "He died when I was 12. Never saw me grown, never met Thomas, never held his grandson." Josiah set down the hammer and crossed to her. "I'm not going anywhere, Clara. I promise." "You can't promise that." "Watch me." He pulled her into his arms and held her tight. "I spent 3 years wishing I was dead," he murmured against her hair. "Now I've got something to live for. You think I'm going to throw that away on a leaky roof?" Clara laughed wetly. "When you put it that way." "I always put it that way. I'm very logical." "You're ridiculous." "That too." The wedding took place on the first truly warm day of spring. It wasn't fancy. They had no money for fancy. But Martha made the trip from Red Hollow to serve as witness, and the circuit preacher agreed to perform the ceremony in exchange for a home-cooked meal. Clara wore her best dress, the same one she'd worn to marry Thomas, carefully mended and pressed. Josiah wore his only suit, which fit poorly, and made him look profoundly uncomfortable. "Stop fidgeting," Clara whispered as they stood before the preacher. "This collar's trying to strangle me." "It'll be over in 10 minutes. I might be dead by then. Then I'll be a widow again, and everyone will feel very sorry for me." Josiah snorted, which earned him a glare from the preacher. "Sorry," he muttered. "Continue." The ceremony was simple. Traditional vows exchanged rings. Clara's was a band Josiah had carved from wood, polished smooth and fitted perfectly to her finger, and a kiss that made Martha dab at her eyes with a handkerchief. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Sam cheered so loud the horses startled. Afterwards, they sat around the table in the cabin. Clara, Josiah, Sam, Martha, and the preacher, eating roast chicken and fresh bread and the last of the preserves from Martha's cellar. "To the newlyweds," Martha said, raising her glass. "May your troubles be few, and your joys be many." "Hear, hear," the preacher agreed. Josiah looked at Clara across the table. His eyes were soft, warm, full of something she'd never expected to see again. Love. "I don't deserve this," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "Yes, you do. I don't know how to be what you need. You already are." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I love you, Clara Cole." Her new name. It sounded strange on his lips, and absolutely perfect. "I love you too, Josiah, more than I ever thought possible." Sam, oblivious to the moment passing between them, waved his fork in the air. "Can I have more chicken?" "Yes, sweetheart," Clara said, not taking her eyes off her husband. "You can have whatever you want." Summer brought hard work and harder choices. The fields needed planting, the fences needed mending, the barn needed a new roof, and the chicken coop had been completely destroyed by some creature during the winter. Clara and Josiah worked side by side, sunrise to sunset, building a life from scratch. It was exhausting. It was frustrating. Some days Clara wanted to throw down her tools and weep, but it was also wonderful, because at the end of every day Josiah was there, holding her, kissing her forehead, telling her they'd figure it out together. And they did. The crops came in better than expected. Enough to sell at market, enough to put money away for winter, enough to prove that they could make this work. "We're going to be okay," Clara said one evening, looking out at the fields heavy with grain. Josiah stood beside her, his arm around her waist. "We're going to be more than okay." Sam came running up, his dog, a stray he'd adopted, and named Scout, at his heels. "Pa, Mama, look what I caught." He held up a fish, small but proudly displayed. "That's a good one," Josiah said seriously. "Big enough for dinner. Maybe with a lot of vegetables. Then we'll have a lot of vegetables." Sam beamed and ran off toward the creek again, Scout barking at his heels. Clara leaned into Josiah's side. "He's happy. Are you?" She looked up at him. This man who had been a stranger, then a savior, then a friend, and now a husband. This man who had carried her out of a blizzard and into a new life. "Happier than I've ever been." Josiah kissed her softly. "Good. Because I plan to keep making you happy for a very long time." Autumn painted the mountains in gold and crimson. The harvest was gathered, the wood was stacked, and the cabin was ready for another winter. But this winter would be different. Clara sat by the fire one evening, knitting a small blanket. Sam was already asleep, worn out from a day of chores and play. Josiah sat across from her, reading an old newspaper someone had left at the trading post. "Josiah. I need to tell you something." He looked up, instantly alert. "What is it? What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong." She set down her knitting. I'm going to have a baby." Silence. Josiah stared at her, the newspaper forgotten in his lap. "A baby." "Yes. Our baby. Unless you know something I don't." He was on his feet before she could blink, crossing the room, pulling her up into his arms. Clara, are you sure?" "I'm sure. Martha confirmed it before she left." Josiah's face transformed. The careful guard he always wore, the walls he'd built around his heart, they crumbled in an instant, leaving only joy. Pure, overwhelming joy. "A baby," he whispered. "We're having a baby. Are you happy?" "Happy." He laughed, the sound breaking in his throat. "I'm terrified. I'm amazed. I'm the happiest I've ever been." He cupped her face in his hands. "You're giving me everything, Clara. Everything I thought I'd lost forever. You gave it to yourself. You just needed someone to remind you." He kissed her long and deep and full of promise. "I love you. I love you too. I'm going to be a father again." "You're already a father. Sam has called you Pa for months." "I know, but this..." He pressed his hand gently against her stomach. "This is different. This is ours, yours and mine. Proof that we built something real." Clara covered his hand with hers. "We built something real the moment you opened your door." Josiah rested his forehead against hers. "Best decision I ever made. The only decision. I wasn't going away. I know, you're stubborn as a mule. And you love me for it. God help me, I do." They stood there wrapped in each other as the fire crackled and the night grew deep around them. Outside, the first snowflakes of winter began to fall. Winter arrived gentle that year, as if the world itself was protecting the small family nestled in the mountain cabin. Clara grew round with the baby. Sam grew excited, constantly asking questions about what it would be like to have a brother or sister. "What if it's a boy? Can I teach him to fish?" "Of course." "What if it's a girl?" "You can still teach her to fish." Sam considered this. "I guess girls can fish too." "Girls can do anything boys can do," Clara said firmly. "Remember that." "Yes, Mama." Josiah spent the winter carving a cradle. He worked on it every evening by the fire, his big hands surprisingly delicate as they shaped the wood. He carved flowers along the sides, wild roses like the ones Clara had mentioned, growing on her parents' farm. She cried when she saw it finished. "It's beautiful." "It's just wood." "It's love," she corrected. carved into something we can touch. Josiah ducked his head, embarrassed by her praise. I wanted the baby to have something made by family, something with meaning. They will. They do. Clara ran her fingers along the carved roses. This is the most beautiful thing anyone's ever made for me. Well, you deserve beautiful things. She kissed his cheek. I already have them. You, Sam, this baby, this home. She looked around the cabin, warm, sturdy, filled with love. I have everything I ever wanted. The baby came in early spring, on a night when the wind howled and the snow fell thick. Martha had arrived a week before just in case. She delivered the baby with practiced hands while Josiah paced outside like a caged animal. You'll wear a hole in the floor, Sam said from his perch on the porch railing. I can't help it. Pa, is Mama going to be okay? Josiah stopped pacing. He looked at his son in every way that mattered, and felt a wave of fierce love. Your mama is the strongest person I've ever met. She's going to be fine. Promise? Promise. A cry split the night. Thin and high and absolutely beautiful. Josiah's heart stopped. The door opened. Martha stood there exhausted, but smiling. It's a girl. Mother and baby are both healthy. Josiah pushed past her into the cabin. Clara lay in their bed, pale and sweating, but her eyes were bright. In her arms, wrapped in the blanket she'd been knitting all winter, was a tiny, red-faced bundle. Come meet your daughter, Clara whispered. Josiah approached the bed on legs that trembled. He looked down at the baby, at his daughter, and felt something crack open in his chest. She's perfect, he breathed. She has your eyes. Poor thing, Clara laughed weakly. Your eyes are my favorite thing about you. I thought it was my cooking. That's a close second. Josiah reached out and touched the baby's cheek with one finger. She turned toward the touch, her tiny mouth working. Hello, little one, he murmured. I'm your pa. I'm going to spend the rest of my life protecting you. I hope that's all right. The baby made a sound, not quite a cry, not quite a coo, and Josiah felt tears sliding down his cheeks. He didn't wipe them away. What should we name her? Clara asked. Josiah looked at his wife, at the woman who had saved him, loved him, given him a family when he thought he'd never have one again. Mary, he said quietly, after my first wife, if that's all right with you. Clara's eyes filled with tears. It's perfect. And her middle name should be Ruth, after your mother. Mary Ruth Cole. Clara smiled. It's beautiful. The door opened, and Sam crept in. Can I see? Come here, sweetheart. He approached the bed carefully, as if the baby might explode if he moved too fast. He peered down at his new sister with wide eyes. She's so little. You were that little once. No, I wasn't. Yes, you were. Smaller even. Sam shook his head in disbelief. She looks like a potato. Josiah snorted. Clara shot him a look. She does not look like a potato. She looks like an angel. A potato angel, Sam said diplomatically. Josiah lost the battle against laughter. Clara tried to glare at him, but ended up laughing too, which made the baby squirm in protest. All right, all right. Clara settled the baby against her chest. Everyone out. Mary and I need to rest. Yes, ma'am. Josiah leaned down and kissed her forehead. I love you. I love you too. Thank you. For what? For everything. For finding me. For staying. For this. He gestured at the baby, at Sam, at the cabin around them. For giving me a reason to live. Clara reached up and touched his face. You were always worth saving, Josiah. You just needed someone to remind you. He kissed her palm, then straightened. Come on, partner, he said to Sam. Let's let your mama and sister sleep. Sam took his hand without protest. Pa, yeah, I'm glad you're here. Josiah squeezed his son's hand. Me too, buddy. Me too. Years passed as years do. Mary grew from a baby into a toddler, then into a bright, fierce girl who had her mother's stubbornness and her father's eyes. Sam grew into a young man tall and strong, with his birth father's gentle heart and his stepfather's quiet courage. The farm prospered. The family grew. 2 more children followed Mary, twin boys, named Thomas and Daniel, after the men who had come before. Clara's hair silvered at the temples. Josiah's beard went gray. But their love only deepened, weathering every storm, growing stronger with each passing year. On quiet evenings, they sat on the porch together, watching their children play in the fields their parents had fought so hard to keep. "Do you ever think about those early days?" Clara asked one sunset. "Which ones?" "The blizzard. The gunfights, the trial. All of it." Josiah was quiet for a moment. "I think about the door." "The door?" "The night you showed up. Sam pounding on my door in the storm. I think about what would have happened if I hadn't opened it." Clara shuddered. "Don't. I'm not saying it to frighten you. I'm saying it because I'm grateful." That moment, that one decision changed everything. She took his hand. "For both of us." I was ready to give up Clara. I was ready to let the darkness win. And then there you were, half frozen in the snow, and suddenly I had a reason to keep fighting. We saved each other. We did. Sam appeared at the edge of the field, waving toward the house. Behind him, the younger children were running, laughing, chasing each other through the tall grass. "Supper's almost ready," he called. Clara waved back. "We'll be right there." She turned to Josiah, ready to go in. He looked at her, his wife, his partner, his heart, and smiled. "With you, always." They stood together, hands intertwined, and walked toward the warmth of the cabin. Inside, the fire crackled. The children laughed. The smell of bread and stew filled the air. Outside, the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. And on the porch railing, right where Clara had left it all those years ago, the old flour sack sat, patched and faded, but still whole. A reminder of how far they'd come. A testament to the love that had carried them through. Clara paused at the doorway and looked back. She thought of Thomas, who had loved her first. Of the son he'd never met. Of the home he'd died to protect. "Thank you," she whispered, "for leading me here." The wind stirred, gentle as a kiss. Then she turned and walked inside, closing the door behind her. Some stories end in tragedy. Some end in triumph. But the best stories, the truest stories, end like this. With a family gathered around a table. With laughter echoing off the walls. With love that began in desperation and grew into something unbreakable. Clara Whitmore had lost everything once. But in losing everything, she found something greater than she'd ever imagined: a man who carried her through the storm, a son who never stopped believing, and a home built not on land or deed, but on the simple, stubborn choice to keep going. The snow would come again. The winters would be hard. Challenges would rise and fall like the tides. But they would face them together, because that was what family meant. And the Cole family, forged in fire, tempered by loss, unbroken by all who tried to destroy them, would endure. Not just for a season, not just for a lifetime, forever.